How's it going, everybody? Today we are asking this question: what else does Christ's death redeem? This is going to take us into questions about how God interacts with nature, with humanity, and even a little glimpse into what is heaven really like? What is God's kingdom really like? So I'm excited to get into that with you guys right now. Okay, so what else does Christ's death redeem? You can go back to the last lesson and check out why we're asking this question. But the answer from the New City Catechism is every part of fallen creation. Now, I'm using the kids' version because that's what I like. The adult version does start slightly different, and I think it's important to point this out. The adult version says, Christ's death is the beginning of the redemption and renewal of every part of fallen creation. And that language of the beginning is going to be important as we go through this lesson today. So let's check out Romans 8:18. And I'm going to read a few verses here. For I consider that the sufferings of this present time not worthy to be compared with the glory that is being revealed to us. For the anxious longing of the creation waits eagerly for the revealing of the sons of God. For the creation was subjected to futility, not willingly, but because of him who subjected it, in hope that the creation itself will be set free from its slavery to corruption into the freedom of the glory of the children of God. For we know that the whole creation groans and suffers the pains of childbirth together until now. And this sets up why we're asking this question. And I'm getting a bunch of sunlight from this. Hang in there. So this verse sets up why we're asking this question. We see that sin has an effect, not just on us personally, but on the whole world, on the nature of this earth and of the cosmos. And so God's redemptive plan is also personal, but it's also universal in its scope. God is not just coming to redeem me personally, and I don't really care about what happens to my neighbors or my community or this planet. No, the gospel is good news, not only for me as an individual, but for all of us and for the whole earth. You can see what I've highlighted in this passage are the time elements in yellow, and then the creation that is mentioned in green. And so you see that God is up to something. There is a process going on, that God is involved in redeeming all of fallen creation. The sin affected everything, and so God is redeeming everything. I think that is an awesome, awesome message. And so when we think of God's redemptive plan, we cannot just be concerned with how it affects me as an individual, although that's good. I'm grateful that God has personally dealt with what I struggle with personally. And in the few lessons ago, we talked about how Jesus's humanity really does connect personally, not just in kind of a general way, but really to me as an individual, to you as an individual. And I'm grateful for that. But I also want to acknowledge that it's corporate. God is redeeming our communities. God is redeeming human society, and God is redeeming this whole earth. The actual earth itself will be renewed. And so think about something in this world that you really love, something that brings you joy. It could be a place, it could be an activity, it could be a food or an animal. You pick it. My place is Yosemite National Park. I was fortunate enough to grow up there, and I never get tired of looking at that amazing landscape. And I wonder what Yosemite will look like when God renews it. Because as Christians, we acknowledge that God isn't just wiping away this earth. He is making it new. C.S. Lewis, he imagines a person going from this world into the heavenly world. And when that happens, he describes this person trying to pick up a flower off the ground, and he couldn't even bend the stalk of that flower because the stuff of heaven is more real than this place. And because I'm from this place, that when that person in that story, he goes into the heavenly realm and he begins to look like a ghost. He says, because the stuff of heaven is more real than this stuff, and I am a ghost by comparison. And so God is renewing his creation so that it really truly reflects his glory the way he originally intended it. So I think of Yosemite, and I think of how beautiful and breathtaking that landscape is, but I also acknowledge this, that it gets a lot of air pollution from the Central Valley, and so you can't really see it for what it is until you go on a day maybe after it rains or something like that, and just how crystal clear the air is and how amazing and breathtaking that landscape is on a clear day is kind of what I'm thinking of in this. Like when God actually redeems all of creation, it will be that much better. So think of those things that you love, that bring you joy, and imagine what those things are like if God was to renew that. And then I would encourage you to be bold enough and share that in the comment section of this video. I'd love to hear what you guys like. We'll get into some more stuff here. Sorry, a little bit of a tangent there, but yeah, like God is renewing this world. And I think sometimes we get the impression that like heaven or God's heavenly kingdom is just like a place for spirit balls to bounce around, or beams of light, or we're all singing really weird songs and things like that. It's otherworldly. But no, it's very real, and I hope you see that that God is making all things new. In fact, we can go to Revelation 21 and check this out. He's saying, "Behold," that means look, see, don't miss this. God is up to something. He says, "Behold, I am making." That's that time element again. Behold, I am making all things. That's the whole cosmos. I'm included personally as an individual in that, but it's also corporate. I am making all things new. The gospel teaches us that we're not just redeemed from this world that is tainted by sin, but we are redeemed for this world that God is making, for his heavenly kingdom. And so he has to make us capable of dwelling in that place. And so there is this process going on. And sometimes we ask this question, and hang in there with me. I realize this is getting a little bit long, and for youth, our attention spans not that long, but hang in there with me. Nope, now I forgot what I was going to say. The pattern that God is showing us in his redemptive story is one of creation, it's one of the fall, and then it's redemption. And that's what we're talking about here. And we see that actually mimicked or reflected in the life of Jesus, in his birth, death, and his resurrection. But notice how Jesus comes back after he is resurrected from the dead. And we see something really interesting in his interaction with Thomas. He says this to Thomas: "Reach here with your fingers and see my hands, and reach your hand and put it on my side, and do not be unbelieving, but believe." What is Jesus pointing to? Because Thomas had said, unless I see the scars, I'm not going to believe. So Jesus points him to his scars. Now, this is Jesus's resurrected and glorified body. He is recognized sometimes from his disciples. He has the scars from his crucifixion. He eats fish by the sea, right? So he's eating, that's real fish that he's eating. Heaven is described as a banquet. And it's not like a pretend banquet, like, in the movie Hook, when they sit down and they have to imagine the food they're eating. We're eating real food, very good food, a heavenly banquet that's very very real. And the Bible describes that transformation as being very real. And we see it in the body of Jesus here after his death and resurrection. Now, we also see that he like teleports, he goes through walls, and sometimes his followers don't recognize him. So there is a transformation. There is a, it is new in that sense. It's glorified in that sense. And so that's what we're getting at with all of creation being renewed and glorified and on that day. We're in that process right now, and there will come a day. Colossians 1. This is actually the memory verse for this catechism question, so we got to put it in somewhere. But look at this, verse 20. Well, verse 19, let's give you the context. For it was the Father's good pleasure for all the fullness of deity to dwell in him, and through him to reconcile all things to himself, having made peace through the blood of his cross. Through him, I'm saying, whether things on earth or things in heaven. So the gospel message, the redemptive work of God, is not just personal, though it is, it's also corporate. He is renewing human society in peace and not in chaos, under the leadership of a holy, righteous God, not under the leadership of people who would abuse their power and affect those who are under privilege. And so that is a great hope that we have, because when we look at this world, we see that chaos, and we know that God's peace is coming. We also see that the earth itself is out of balance, but there will be a harmony with nature coming, that God will renew all things, whether the things on earth or the things in heaven. And that is a great hope that I hope for you is very encouraging. And so thanks for hanging in there. I know this feels like it went a little bit long, but I appreciate you guys being a part of this and being a part of this community, sharing your comments. I'd love to hear your favorite thing about this earth and what gives you joy, and imagine that being renewed and giving God the true glory that he intended for it in the original creation prior to sin kind of corrupting everything. And so thanks for being here, and I look forward to being with you in the next one.